This tall man, unlike what you might expect from a baby, took great pleasure in rolling an empty hand grenade across the carpet and playing with it. His father used to take him and his other sibling to watch executions carried out by court orders. Sometimes they also went to the beach for summer holidays and spent time like a normal family. But it was clear that something was hidden underneath this normal. Because Uday was starting to turn into someone who used his power from his father to humiliate and torture the people around him. Uday Hussein was the eldest child of Iraq's dictator President Saddam Hussein and his wife Sajida Talfa. He grew up as a boy, very attached to his mother. He always admired his father as well. In fact, his father saw him as the heir who would replace him in the future. He went to medical school in Baghdad, but clearly he didn't like it very much because only 3 days later he transferred to another department, engineering. He finished his doctorate with a thesis titled "The World After the Cold War."
During his acceptance speech, Uday Hussein said the decline of the Soviet Union had had the same impact as the World War. But it was the United States which was the main target of his thesis on the Cold War period.
According to some, Uday was not a very smart person. Academics were too scared to give him bad grades. It was even said that he had his thesis written by others in exchange for money. After all, he was Saddam's son and no one could touch him. When Uday went to university, most young women were terrified. Sometimes they didn't go to class and sometimes they didn't come to school at all. Soon the reason became clear. Uday's friend Aziz Altai says this: if Uday liked a girl, he would harass her, invite her to his parties, and if she refused, he would have his men bring her by force. Then he would force her to sleep with him and later have his men kill her and make her disappear. This horrifying allegation spread among all the female students, and they were forced to choose between getting an education and staying alive. Meanwhile, Uday was about 6.5 feet tall, had an athletic build, and loved football. Because of his interest in football, his father appointed him president of the Iraqi Olympic Committee and the Iraqi Football Association in 1984, when he was only 20 years old. Suddenly, Iraq's most successful national Olympic athletes began to quit sports one by one. In important matches, some talented athletes suddenly became sick or claimed to be injured and refused to play. Because Uday was a very ambitious person and could not tolerate defeat. First, he pressured the coaches to make the Olympic athletes follow superhuman training programs. Even then, if there was a defeat, he enjoyed solving the problem in his own way. There was a basement floor in the sports committee building, and it was basically Uday's torture center. After important matches ended in defeat, he would go crazy. He had even developed specific methods to take revenge on the athletes who lost. He would put them alive into coffins, have them beaten with iron whips, crush their finger bones by placing them between two wooden boards, make them wear iron masks with nails inside, and stand like that until morning or have them sexually tortured. Most athletes had already left the country after Uday became head of the sports committee. One of them was weightlifter Riyad Ahmed, but Uday did not stop at athletes, he also targeted their families. After this, Riyad Ahmed made a statement on live television and made the world see what was happening, because his family had been interrogated by Uday and sent to prison for 16 days.
I don't have much knowledge about them, and I'm very much worried about them. Specifically my brothers.
What everyone feared finally happened. Uday formed his own football team, Al Rashid. He sent word to all the best footballers in the country, calling them to join his team. One of these offers went to Iraqi footballer Ahmed Radi, and he refused. Uday immediately had his men kidnap and beat this player. After threatening to hurt his family, he forced him to join Al Rashid. There was a successful Iraqi sportsman who openly opposed Uday's methods and violence, Amo Baba. He said that Uday's torture left permanent effects on Olympic athletes and football players, and he said this publicly. He was kidnapped by Uday, beaten and tortured. Later, after a successful match in 1992, they wanted to give him a prize. But the person who would give this prize was Uday Amo Baba, refused to accept a prize from a psychopath who was ruining the country's sports and said it would be an insult. At that moment, thousands of people in the stadium took courage from Amo Baba and began to voice their anger toward Uday. Naturally, this made Uday furious. One of Saddam Hussein's servants, whose loyalty he never questioned, was Kamel Hanna. He also risked his life for Saddam by tasting his food beforehand to prevent possible poisoning attempts. And since he was the one who introduced Saddam to his new young wife, Samira Shahbandar, Kamel Hanna had become one of Saddam's indispensable servants. But Uday, known for being very attached to his mother, grew angry at both Samira and Kamel Hanna during conversations because his mother constantly provoked him against them. On October 18, 1988, a dinner was held in honor of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak's wife, Suzanne Mubarak. Around the same time, Kamel Hanna had gone to a nearby wedding, and from time to time he was firing his gun into the air for fun. Uday immediately went there with his men and scolded Kamel Hanna in front of everyone, telling him not to shoot into the air. Kamel Hanna got angry at this and fired into the air again. Already manipulated by his mother and inclined to violence, Uday took a stick in his hand and struck Kamel Hanna's head with a strong blow, without caring about the guests around. Because of this blow, his father's most important servant had a brain hemorrhage and died. Hosni Mubarak said only one thing about Uday: he is a psychopath. There had to be a price for this murder. Thanks to his mother Sajida's intervention and her convincing Saddam, Uday received a punishment that was more like a reward. He was exiled to work at the Iraqi consulate in Switzerland. Despite his young age, he had acquired many properties before his exile. He was especially interested in cars. Knowing this, his father, Saddam Hussein, had all the cars in Uday's garage burned, trying to send the message to society that even the son of a criminal would pay a heavy price. Uday's exile in Switzerland ended when he was deported by the government in 1990 because of fights, harassment, and other problems he caused there. He returned to Iraq, apologized to his father, and managed to be forgiven. In 1995, among the people listening to a speech Uday was giving at a party was his step-uncle Ibrahim Watban. This step-uncle's popularity among Iraqis was growing, and he was slowly becoming one of Uday's targets. Uday's upper jaw naturally stuck out a bit, which caused a speech defect. That night at the party, Ibrahim mockingly imitated Uday's way of speaking in front of the people next to him. Seeing this, Uday's uncle Louay told Uday what had happened. As the argument escalated, Uday shot his step-uncle in the leg multiple times, and the 6 men working with his uncle were killed the same night by gunfire from Uday's bodyguards. Uncle Ibrahim was taken to the hospital. Because of the 9 bullets that hit his leg, he suffered lifelong problems: difficulty walking, loss of his sexual organ, and removal of a part of his stomach. The event of Saddam's stepbrother's son Uday shooting Ibrahim drove Saddam mad with rage, but it was not talked about much because the next day Saddam's sons-in-law fled to Jordan. Brothers Hussein Kamel and Saddam Kamel al-Majid controlled the country's oil sales, supply of military equipment, and food imports. They controlled a massive flow of money. Uday manipulated the situation of his brothers-in-law fleeing to Jordan and provoked his father Saddam Hussein against them, making them be declared traitors. The reason given was that they had requested asylum from Jordan, promising to give the country's secret information to intelligence services like the CIA and MI6. These now empty trade areas had to be filled by someone. From then on, all oil sales and food imports began to be handled through Uday and Qusay Hussein. A year later, in 1996, Saddam Hussein announced that the Kamel brothers would be forgiven and invited them back to Iraq, promising their safety. On February 23, 1996, the Kamel brothers returned, but they were already considered traitors. They had shared the country's secrets with foreign intelligence services, and these men with a terrible reputation were married to Saddam Hussein's daughters. On February 25th, Saddam Hussein immediately asked his daughters to divorce his sons-in-law, but the Kamel brothers refused and headed toward the palace where they lived. The next day, Uday and military forces came to the front of the Kamel brothers' palace and demanded their surrender, but the response was gunfire. After a 12-hour firefight with Uday and his men, Hussein Kamel and Saddam Kamel were captured, dead. As the end of 1996 approached, Uday, as always, drove his flashy car along Al-Mansour Street to find a new woman. But this time, a bad surprise was waiting for him. Suddenly, gun barrels turned toward his car and bullets started raining down. Out of a total of 50 bullets, 17 hit him. The shops around were in shock. In fact, this was something everyone had wanted, but no one dared to say it out loud because of fear. So who carried out this attack? The Shia Shaban movement claimed responsibility for the attack. Because of the extremism and unjust behavior of Uday and his father, this attack aimed to kill him. But even though 17 bullets hit him, Uday survived. The hitman, Salman Sharif, who was questioned about that day, said this: "For 3 months, we scouted that street where he went to pick up girls. He came almost every Thursday around 7 p.m. Sometimes he came without bodyguards, and the most luxurious car on the street usually belonged to him. At the same time, we were trying to figure out which shop owners were real and which were undercover police. That night, Uday came to the street in a luxury Porsche, and the moment I realized it was him, I opened fire. In short, I took revenge for the pain he caused those young girls." After Salman Sharif was tried, his brothers and his entire family were executed. Uday was rushed to the hospital by the brother of his singer friend. After difficult surgeries carried out by Dr. Ala Bashir, he survived, but the attack left some permanent damage. For example, he could no longer walk or speak like before. He had trouble speaking because after he was shot, his blood pressure dropped and his brain did not receive enough blood for a while, which caused this condition, and these events made Uday even more aggressive. He began to take pleasure in having others tortured. Beautiful girls, foreign alcohol, dancing, and a party where everything was allowed. Yes, it all sounds very attractive, but there was something strange about these parties. For example, out of 50 people at the party, 45 were young and beautiful women, and the 4 or 5 male guests were chosen by Uday from among his friends. But most of the time, his friends didn't even want to attend these parties. Because Uday had a few nasty habits. He pressured guests to drink excessively, and some of the drink mixes he made were his own experiments. For example, Uday's cocktail consisted of this: whiskey, brandy, vodka, and cognac, all mixed together. He called this drink Uday Saddam Hussein, and made the guests, especially the singers, drink it, giving them 10 minutes to finish it. Those who didn't drink were identified by his guards, then had their hair and eyebrows shaved off, were beaten and whipped. And all of this happened right in front of Uday's eyes because he took extreme pleasure from watching people being tortured and abused. In this video, for example, you will witness what he did one night when he overdid alcohol and drugs. Would you want to be in that environment? The people there certainly didn't, but they were forced to attend. Qasim Sultan was an Iraqi singer who was invited to such parties organized by Uday and sang there. One day before going on stage, he was asked to drink a cocktail made of gin, vodka, and other strong alcohols. As a result, he was taken to the hospital before he could even perform. In another concert by Qasim, Uday got angry that Qasim came on stage after him and had his men beat the singer before he went on stage. One of the bad memories Qasim shared in another interview was this. After the assassination attempt on Uday, Uday invited him to his palace to sing for him and made him sing among the lions he kept there. Also, Uday banned singers like Fadel Awad, Saadun Jaber and Riyad Ahmed, who were famous in the 60s and 70s, from performing concerts and making tapes because they were old generation singers and not the type of music Uday liked. During the Gulf War, after torturing American soldier Jeffrey Zahn, who had been captured, he forced him to speak against his own country, America, on Iraqi television.
Many, like Lieutenant Jeffrey Zahn, one of the first captured, were beaten and forced to denounce their country on camera.
I think our leaders and our people have wrongly attacked the peaceful people of Iraq.
Speaking of television, even though he was not a real journalist, he was also interested in that field and used his father's power to create some media outlets. The Babel newspaper, Youth TV, and Voice of Youth Radio were some of these. If he wanted to discredit someone or a rival, he used the power of his media to destroy them. In addition, during the 1990s, because of the embargo after the Gulf War, he secretly ran all the cigarette, alcohol, food, and spare parts businesses in the country. Smuggling brought him an incredible fortune. He also claimed to make a lot of money from a business called Super Chicken and from an ice cream factory called Wave. It was also widely talked about that during the Gulf War he stole 1,200 luxury cars from Kuwait. On July 22, 2003, Uday and his brother Qusay were being hunted all over Iraq. A reward was offered to anyone who informed on them, and it was not a small amount, $30 million. Someone came to the 101st military base in Mosul and asked, "If I tell you where the brothers are, will I really get this reward?" After receiving a yes, he said that Uday and Qusay were hiding with their bodyguards and Qusay's 14-year-old son, Mustafa, in his own villa. He even agreed to take a lie detector test and passed it. Immediately, the operation began, and heavily armed military units surrounded the house where they were hiding. A helicopter also arrived to provide air support. First, they made an announcement and asked them to surrender peacefully. But when they received gunfire in response, the villa was blown to pieces with 2 missiles from the helicopter and 50 caliber machine guns. After a 5-hour firefight, Uday, Qusay, Mustafa and their bodyguards were captured dead. The man who once terrorized the country with the torture he inflicted on people was now gone. If you've listened until this point, it means we are still together. Thank you for your support by subscribing. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.